And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan, and this is your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook on this Monday, August 4th, 2025. And to set things up, this is the flight weather we're looking at for Tuesday into Wednesday, but as of Monday, we still have high pressure here over the western Gulf, giving areas of south central sunshine, warm temperatures. We still have warm readings across the interior with a fair amount of sunshine. Areas of the Panhandle this Monday still could be a few scattered light rain showers, and even into Tuesday morning, the potential for some IFR conditions, a little band of rain from a secondary disturbance there in the northern Panhandle. Otherwise, to the west, we find extensive IFR conditions on the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula, much of the Bering Sea, from the Pribilof, St. Matthew, across the Aleutian chain. There is an area of low pressure that will be sitting here over the central lower Bering, and another low that will be pulling out of the North Pacific, heading northeastward, south of the Alaska Peninsula. These two features as we go through midweek are going to provide breezier and rainy weather that's going to eventually move up into the Gulf. Along the Arctic coast, IFR conditions, some low stratus and fog there on the Beaufort Sea coastline. And then Tuesday afternoon, there could be some scattered thunderstorms develop, instability there along the middle upper Yukon, 40-mile gold country, the Tanana Valley, along and just south of the Alaska Range, the northern Copper River Basin. That potential will exist. A little drier conditions should develop for Tuesday afternoon across the Panhandle. IFR pushing into the lower Gulf, just around on the east side of Kodiak Island, the east side of the Alaska Peninsula, and then just offshore out over much of the eastern Bering, St. Matthew, Nunavik Island, and the Aleutian chain. Wednesday morning, we still have VFR conditions across a good portion of the interior, especially south of the Brooks Range, maybe a little MVFR, southern Panhandle, and then expanding IFR conditions over the Gulf, maybe a little bit coming into Kennedy entrance there of Cook Inlet and Kamishak Bay, east side of Kodiak Island, east side of the Alaska Peninsula, a little offshore there, across the Bering, St. Matthew, St. Paul, the Pribilofs, all through the Aleutian chain seeing IFR conditions. And then finally, Wednesday afternoon, could be a pocket of instability toward the Alcan border, mainly along the eastern Alaska Range, upper portion of the Tanana Valley. You could see an isolated thunderstorm form there. Note the IFR conditions out in the Gulf and just off the Kenai and on the east side of Kodiak Island. Also back to the west, we have extensive IFR conditions, St. Matthew, St. Paul, much of the Aleutians, and that other area, low pressure will begin to come northeastward out of the North Pacific. Finally, Brooks Range too could see some MVFR conditions. There's much of the next few days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're looking at a front draped in this region, Brooks Range, North Slope, that's just kind of stationary, cooler air temperatures there on the north side. So looking at the passes here for Tuesday, Anaktuvik Pass may have a little MVFR early in the day, otherwise VFR. Same thing out again, maybe to start a little MVFR, becoming VFR. On the west arm of the Alaska Range, Lake Clark, Merrill, on up through Rainy Pass could have some MVFR in the morning, giving way to VFR. Windy Pass should generally stay VFR on Tuesday. Could be an isolated thunderstorm pop-up with the daytime heating. Same thing, Isabel Pass, generally VFR conditions, but could see an isolated storm in the vicinity of the path. And then finally, further east, Mentasta Pass, generally VFR conditions with perhaps an isolated thunderstorm developing within vicinity of the pass. And as you go down to the Copper River Basin, there could be some MVFR conditions there in the morning. Tanita Pass, generally VFR conditions, especially north side of the pass, could see an isolated storm develop in vicinity. And then for Portage Pass, we're expecting VFR conditions Tuesday. And Chilkoot White may see IFR conditions early in the day give way to VFR conditions, especially by mid-late morning as the daytime heating improves and a little drier air tries to come in from the north. But looking at the freezing levels, you can see where that front is right up here. It's going to be near stationary here through the early part of the week. Freezing levels aloft, there's a little pocket of a little lower freezing levels below 8,000 feet over the Panhandle, providing a little bit of instability. And then the low out here is over here in the Bering. And freezing levels are below 10,000, near 9,000 feet. And as we look at where there are clouds bearing precipitation, thicker cloud cover, With that low, and especially the front arcing ahead of it, there may be some moderate icing, but pretty high up above 14 and 16,000 feet from the Pribilovs down into the eastern Aleutians and lower portion of the Alaska Peninsula. As we go further north and east, the interior may see some isolated moderate icing above 12,000 feet, and maybe a pocket of moderate icing there back toward the Lisburn Peninsula around Point Hope, Cape Lisburn. And the jet stream level, winds 30,000 feet. We have a little bit of a circulation here, upper levels just off of Haiduk Y, but the more notable one is back here in the lower Bering, central Aleutians. Bring it down to 9,000 feet, 700 millibars, and we can see the broader circulation associated with that low. Winds 30 to 40 knots in this broad circulation. We look to the north and west in the wake where this front is kind of hung up. Northwesterly winds coming onshore there of the Lisburn Peninsula, Chukchi Sea coast at 35 to 40 knots. And then finally, 3,000 feet, there is a little pocket of stronger winds coming into British Columbia, 35 to 50 knots. But southeast, relatively light winds, same thing, south central, much of the mainland. But coming back to the west, we have this broader circulation with the low that's centered here over the lower Bering. And on the front side, south winds coming up into the Alaska Peninsula to, say, Kuskokwim Bay, 30 to 35 knots. They become southeasterly, 35 knots, near and west of St. Matthew, and then wrapping back around counterclockwise circulation. We have north winds, far western Aleutians, 30, 35 knots. So this all translates to the potential for some turbulence, mainly along areas of the Alaska Peninsula with that front with the southeasterly flow ahead of it, back towards St. Paul, Cape Newingham, Etolan Strait, Nunavik Island, back to St. Matthew. This area, isolated moderate turbulence possible, surface to 4,000 feet. And there could also be maybe a isolated turbulence way out toward the western Aleutians, perhaps a vicinity there of Shemya and Attu. So that's the way things are shaping up aviation-wise, and always check the latest conditions and let someone know when you're heading out, where you're going, and have a safe flight.